Now, again, Bible is making fun of the idea the Jews are chosen to be chosen. Nobody chooses anything to be his chosen anything. If you choose a fork, that's because you are eating French fries. But if you were eating a soup, you would choose a spoon. But then again, the spoon wouldn't be your chosen spoon, and you wouldn't put it onto a wall, and you wouldn't bow down to it saying, "Oh, my chosen spoon." No, you pick the spoon because you want to do something with it. So that's how God picked the Jews. So now there are a few possibilities. And all of this is commentary on Jonah, or Jonah in English. When God picked the Jews, was he sadistic? He knew that they will never fulfill his will, and consequently, he will be able to punish them, and he will enjoy that.
Hello everyone, my name is Božidar Prgonjić and I have a pleasure to speak with Rabbi Eliezer Papo, who is senior lecturer at Ben Gurion University in Israel. How are you, Eliezer? How is in Jerusalem?
Well, taking in consideration the situation, doing well.
Oh, good, good. Happy to hear that. Yeah, so something that among us Christian is like controversy is what to do with jokes and humor, especially in the church. When you come to church, you are expecting solemn worship, not crack too many jokes. And me, who is a foreigner, when you're learning English, sometimes you thought you understand something, but until you are able to get their jokes, you cannot say that you understand the English. I think we can apply the same for the Bible. When we are reading Bible, we are just taking it as an instruction. How can I be better person? So when you take translation, it is more like advising you what you should do, what you should not do. A part of that, you remove all colors. You just stay on this black and white. You should do this and you should avoid doing this. And when you have this kind of court atmosphere, you are not expecting people to joke. And then 1st of April is approaching. How should we react with the 1st of April day of the joke? And also in the church, should we crack at jokes? Does God create a sense of humor, or this is product of human wickedness? So I would start with this question. Does Bible contain humor, or is it something made by devil?
Well, first of all, Bible is extremely serious. It's so serious that it contains plenty of humor. Humor is very serious thing. And Bible is using humor, first of all, to make fun of other deities. Like we can start with, with an obvious example. Um, Baal Zevuv, right? We know him by the name of Baal Zevuv. And people today don't really know that his original name is Baal Zevul. And Baal Zevul in Hebrew means the master of the universe.
Mhm.
And the Bible obviously is not going to call the master of the universe to some idol. So they call him Baal Zevuv. Baal Zevuv means the master of flies. And the master of flies is basically, well, piece of shit. That's what attracts flies. And the idea is, okay, so it's obvious what the idea is. But let me start uh, from the beginning. From biblical point of view, God himself is the writer of the first part of the Bible. He's the writer of 5 books of Moses. Uh, okay. But not only that he is a writer, he also appears in them as a person, as personality, right? So if you have a book, and in that book you have personalities, and then one of the personalities is God, and then God is in interaction with other personalities, then we actually have to ask two questions. The first question is whether God uses comics as a writer. That's one thing. whether he uses humor as a writer. And then the second question we have to ask is, when he is profiling himself, does he do it with a humor or without? So basically, when you see now, as far as Hebrew Bible is concerned, it's divided. Christians usually refer to it by the name of the Old Testament. So the Old Testament is divided into 3 parts, 3 different canons. So the first canon is 5 books of Moses, and God is the writer of them. He is not inspirer. No. He wrote the book. Moses is only the pen God used to write that book. Then in the prophets, the message is divine, but the form is human. And then in the writings, such as Psalms, Songs of Solomon, and so on, the form and the content are human, but the inspiration is divine. So we have divine book, then we have divine message, and then we have divine inspiration to the author, but it's 3 different levels. So let's start with the question, humor and the Torah, humor and the Pentateuch, humor and 5 books of Moses. So first of all, I prepared, I knew what you were going to ask me, so I prepared some texts. So let's start with them. Okay, so let's open here. I believe that this is big enough to be seen. So we are in Exodus, the 2nd book of Moses, and we are in the chapter 32. Moses is up there on the top of the mountain of Sinai, and he just received the 10 commandments and basically the Torah, the Pentateuch. And then while he is still at Sinai, the people who were told that he will return after 40 days, they said to themselves, oh, we don't know what happened to that Moses who took us out of the land of Egypt. They go to Aaron and they ask him to build for them, to shape for them idols which will represent deity which took them out of Egypt. And then look at this. How does God react? He says to Moses, Adonai said to Moshe, Lord said to Moses, go down, hurry. Your people, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt, have become corrupt. Basically, God is saying, it's not my people. It's not my project. It's all yours. I'm passing, I'm passing the project to you. So quickly they have turned aside from the way I ordered them to follow. They have cast a metal statue of a calf, worshipped it, sacrificed to it, and said, Israel, here is your God who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Adonai continued speaking to Moses, I have been watching these people, and you can see how stiff-necked they are. Now leave me alone, God says to man. This is one of the most beautiful verses in the entire Bible. Now leave me alone, so that my anger can blaze against them, and I can put an end to them. And I will make a great nation out of you instead. Why? Because God promised to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that he will make great nation out of them. So if Moses doesn't agree to divine destruction of Israel, then God cannot fulfill his promise. So God is basically offering Moses collaboration. And he says, let me destroy them, and I can still fulfill the promise through you. And then Moshe pleaded with Adonai, his God. And he said, Adonai, why must you anger blaze against your own people? It's not my people, it's your people, whom you brought out of, it wasn't me, it was you, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and a strong hand. Now, Moses is even quoting, because on many places in Bible, God says, I brought you out of the land of Egypt with great power and a strong hand. So now when God says to Moses, the people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, Moses says, me? as far as I can remember, it was you, with great power and a strong hand. Why let the Egyptians say it was the evil intentions that he led them out to slaughter them in the hills and wipe them out of the face of the earth? In other words, he says, okay, I see you are angry. Yes, they should be punished. Maybe they should even be destroyed. But let's think rationally. If you destroy them, you will destroy your own fame. What will the people around us say? Because, look at this, he says, turn from your fierce anger, relent, don't bring such disaster on your people. Remember Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your very self. You promised them, I will make your descendants as many as the stars in the sky, and I will give all this land I have spoken about to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. Basically, he's telling him, I'm not going to collaborate. So if you want to keep the promise, it's without me, right? But he's not saying this openly. So what we can see is that, first of all, what we can see is that God and Moses and God treat Israel as their child. So, just as in a normal family, sometimes it's the father who wants to give up on child and the mother doesn't allow. And sometimes it's the mother who wants to give up on the child and the father doesn't allow. But they are both counting that the other one will not allow it. So, he says, Adonai then changed his mind about the disaster he had planned for his people. Now we will switch to another place. This is the fourth book of Moses, Numbers 11, chapter 11. And it says, look at this is beautiful. Next, the mixed crowd that was with them grew greedy for an easier life. While the people of Israel, for their part, also renewed their weeping and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember, and now look at this is beautiful. This is one of most human verses in the entire Torah. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt. It cost us nothing. Okay? And the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now we are withering away. We have nothing to look at but this man. Man is the bread which was falling from the heaven. So first of all, here I always like to tell the same story. It's a beautiful story. I had a friend in Sarajevo. His mother worked with my father at the secondary school of applied arts. And I knew that more or less at the time when I moved from Sarajevo to Jerusalem, this family moved to Zagreb. They were Jewish. And then all of a sudden, I meet the lady in Jerusalem, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, we went to Zagreb, but I never loved Zagreb, so it's even better to be here. And I'm like, okay, so how do you like it here? And she says, well, they don't have plums for Knedelach. Okay, now I'm thinking, Yugoslavia in flames, Bosnia in flames. She left Sarajevo, went to Zagreb. She left Zagreb. She came here. And this is self-protection. When people live in cataclysmatic times, when people live in catharsic times, when people live in eschatological times, they have to concentrate on something small to keep on going. So she concentrated on Knedelach, or plums for Knedelach. Knedelach is kind of sweet, sweet thing that we eat in Bosnia. So in any case, what happens here is people here are threatened by God's presence on deepest psychological level. Why? Because they are totally dependent on God. They even can't eat without food coming from heaven. So it's not usual human dependence where, you know, generally we all depend on God, because if there is no rain, there shall not be grain. If there is no grain, then there is no bread. And if there is no bread, no, these people can't make anything on their own. Even the bread comes from heaven. That means that they are challenged, because they are painfully aware of divine presence. They are painfully aware of divine existence. So they need to recalculate the distance. So they concentrate on something else. And then they are in hysteria. Now, what's beautiful is, this is what the people are saying. Here comes the objective part of the narrative, where the storyteller of the Bible, God himself, is telling us that the man is not that bad, really. And it says, the man, by the way, was like coriander and white like gum resin. The people would go around gathering it and would grind it up in mills or pound it to paste with mortar and pestle. Then they would cook it in pots and make it into loaves that tasted like cakes baked with olive oil. When the dew settled on the camp during the night, the man came with it. Now what happens? Moses heard the people crying, family after family, each person at the entrance to his tent. Massive hysteria. These are the people who saw with their own eyes 10 plagues of Egypt. And they saw with the people who didn't know how to swim. They saw the Red Sea split in front of them. They went through the sea the way you go through the tunnel. And now they want some onions. Now they want some cucumbers. Now they remember that fish was for no money in Egypt. And now look at this. This is beautiful. Moses heard the people crying. Moses asked Adonai. Now look at this. Now here, Moses, the mother of the people, okay, look at what he says. Why are you treating your servant so badly? Why haven't I found favor in your sight so that you put the burden of this entire people on me? Now he speaks like a mother. Did I conceive this people? Right? Was I their father? No, you are their father. Was I their father so that you tell me, carry them in your arms like a nurse carrying a baby to the land you swore to their ancestors? Doesn't have anything to do with me. It's you and their ancestors. Bye. I'm giving up. I want out. Okay. So where I'm going to get meat to give to this entire people. Oh, okay, so now we see that the mother of the people, or the wife of the household, she is not really giving up, but she is bothered with the question how to provide the meat, because she really cares about them and she wants to provide, because they keep bothering me with their crying and saying, give us meat to eat. I can't carry this entire people by myself alone. It's too much for me. If you are going to treat me this way, then just kill me outright, please. If you have any mercy toward me, and don't let me go on being this miserable. Adonai said to Moses, bring me 70 babysitters. Okay, so basically, okay, I see what's the problem. You can't deal with them alone. Now God is a patriarchal father. So he's not saying, okay, so I'll change their diapers. No, obviously he's not going to do that. But the mother can't either. She said, okay, bring me 70 of the leaders of Israel, people you recognize as leaders of the people and officers of theirs. Bring them to the tent of the meeting and have them stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take some of the spirit which rests on you and put it on them. Then they will carry the burden of the people along with you, so that you won't carry it yourself alone. So, if the technique used to describe these two parallel stories, in one of which God is giving up on people, and in the second one, Moses is giving up on people. God acts as divine father, and Moses acts as popular mother. If you don't recognize that these things are written in a very humoristic manner, then you have a problem. Now, let's see other examples. I want to show you. Wait, let me see. Yeah, look at this. This is beautiful. God signed. Now here, in both of these stories, we are not speaking only about God using humor, but also about God profiling himself as a personality in the book, which has sense of humor. But now look at this. This is beautiful. God, here we are in the first book of Moses, but it's not going to work in English, so I'm showing it in Hebrew. This is Bereshit, or Genesis, 17th chapter of the first book of Moses. And it says like this. God signed the contract with Abraham, and the contract was that he will give to his seed the land and the blessing. But then the seed came about, and the seed was NG. No good. Ishmael was NG. He wasn't good. Now, God doesn't change, right? So how can he change his covenant? Well, easy. Let's say that you have a firm which is called Facebook, right? Then the candidate for the president of the United States wants to charge you with something, right? Then you change the name to Meta. Now you are new legal personality. Okay, but God doesn't change. Oh yes, but he can always change Abraham. So the book, the 17th chapter of of Genesis says, and Abraham was 99 years old, and God appeared to Abraham, and he told him, "I am Almighty," right? And then he says, "Your name shouldn't be Abram anymore. It should be Abraham. So I'm adding you an age. And your wife, Sarah, she shouldn't be Sarah. She should be Sarai. Sorry, your wife, Sarai, shouldn't be Sarai. She should be Sarah. Okay, now you are not Facebook anymore. You are Meta. You are not Twitter anymore. You are X. Okay, now we are signing the new contract. What does the new contract says? And I shall give your seed the blessing and the land, and I shall be their God. So now there is a condition. So Ishmael didn't recognize God as his sovereign. So that's why Ishmael is kicked out. That's why God renews the covenant with Abraham and Sarah. But he renews it in a beautiful way. Why? Because after God basically gave Abraham the possibility to reign over the entire land of Israel. If you remember, after Lot was taken captive, just like Israelis, we have captives today, and Abraham comes with 316 commandos of his own, and he joins the war with few kings against other few kings, and he conquers the land. And he has the opportunity, basically, to become the king of the land. Instead, he gives everything back to the kings. And then God turns to Abraham and he says, Abraham, don't be afraid. To whom do you say don't be afraid? You don't say,
yeah.
What do you say?
To someone who is scared.
Exactly. So why is Abraham scared? And what's the next thing that God tells him? Don't worry. Your salary is a great one. To whom do you say your salary is a great one? To one who believes that he's just about to be fired. And then Abraham discloses to us what was his problem. And he says, well, you are giving me all entire this land, and I don't have a seed. I don't have seed. And God tells, and who will inherit me? It's this guy Eliezer. And God says, no, who comes out of you, he will inherit you. And Abraham says, how do I know that I shall inherit it? And God is like, what the heck? I just gave you the entire country. You just inherited it today. You gave it up. I can give it back to you tomorrow. God says, you know what? Let's go to the lawyer. I'll sign in front of the lawyer. So how does God make this beautiful joke? He says, okay, take the pigeon and the sheep and the calf and whatever, split them into two. Put two sides, two parts on two sides, and I will pass in the middle and take the oath. Now, in the ancient Middle East, when somebody took an oath, he would, if it was a very important thing, then people wouldn't believe that somebody would do that. So in order to prove that he will do it, he would split an animal into two. He would pass between the parts of the animal, and he will say, let happen to me what happened to this animal if I don't fulfill this thing. Today we go to a lawyer and somebody signs, right? You don't, for example, if you go to a bank and you take 500,000 pounds mortgage to buy an apartment, you don't need to kill a cow and to pass between two parts of the cow to impress the director of the bank. Why? Because the bank director says, just sign here that in case you don't return the money, the apartment is ours. So today we go to the lawyer. But at those times, there was no way to secure. So people would take an oath in such a way. But God, who has a beautiful sense for humor, he says to Abraham, okay, you know what? Let's go to the lawyer. Okay. Now look at this. This is a beautiful thing. Where does it say? Okay. Look at this. For example, in the chapter, you know what? Let me open it so that everybody can see it. What was it? Chapter 17 of Genesis. So I'll do it like this. Duplicate. And now we will open chapter 17. It's easier. Okay. Do you see it?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so look at this. I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will increase your numbers greatly. Abraham fell on his face, and God continued speaking with him. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. Before that, it was supposed to be one nation, but Ishmael didn't work out. Okay, so now it's more than one. Your name will no longer be Facebook, but your name will be Meta, or your name will no longer be Twitter, it will be X. Because I have made you the father of many nations. So there is one nation, Ishmael, but they are not a part of the covenant. And now there is a new nation, Yitzhak. I will cause you to be very fruitful. I will make nations out of you. Kings will descend from you. I'm establishing my covenant between me and you, along with your descendants after you, generation after generation, an everlasting covenant. Now, this is new. This was never mentioned before. To be God for you and your descendants after you. This is why there is new covenant. Because Ishmael didn't recognize God to be his God. I will give you and your descendants after you the land in which you are now foreigners, all the land of Canaan as a permanent possession, and I will be their God. God said to Abraham, as for you, you are to keep my covenant. Okay, and now here comes the circumcision, which is also humoristic. Because what are the chances that if you let, first of all, people 99 years old, they usually don't, they don't have erections, they don't have rich sexual life, and they certainly don't make children. But add to it circumcision at late age, right? Only the trauma of it is enough for erectile dysfunction. Okay, so now God says, I'm promising you, you will have children. Now let's make this almost impossible, so that the miracle will be even greater. Now go and circumcise yourself. Okay, and look at this. This is beautiful. God said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you are not to call her Sarai. Her name is to be Sarah. I will bless her. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Truly, I will bless her. She will be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. At this, Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Now, how do you say laughed in Hebrew? Yitzhak.
Yeah.
Yitzhak. Okay. He thought to himself, will a child be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah give birth at 90? Abraham said to God, it's a beautiful thing that you are promising me this new son, but let Ishmael be alive in front of you. Right? So he says, if only Ishmael could live in your presence. God answered, no, but Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you are to call him Yitzhak. He shall laugh. Why? Because Abraham laughed in his... So here God is making practical joke. You laughed when I told you you will have a son, so your son will be called a laughter. If this is not practical joke, again, I'm Queen of England. Now, look at this. Okay, so I'm closing this.
Mhm.
I'm going back to here. Let's say Genesis 21. This is beautiful. Vatomer Sarah, Tzeho kasali Elohim. And Sarah said, God made me a joke. Kol hashomea yitzhak li. Whoever hears about this will laugh to me. Will laugh to me.
Yeah.
Yitzhak li. And then God comes and says, oh, and by the way, when you do give birth to a child, you should call him will laugh. Because you said everybody will laugh to me. Okay, again, practical joke. But now look at this. This is Genesis 27. And we know the story. Yitzhak wants to bless Esau, and he sends him out to bring, to hunt, and to bring him delicious meal that he will be inspired and bless him for that. And then when you read the Bible in English, you cannot appreciate the Hebrew play of words. But in Hebrew, in chapter 27, in the verse 35, it says, Vayomer achi kara shemo Yaakov. And he said, well, that's why he's called Jacob. Vaya'akeveni ze pa'amayim. Now you see, Yaakov, Ya'akeveni. Okay, now that means he passed me from behind 2 times already. So Yaakov means to overtake, to pass from behind, right? Just like on the road. So he passed me from behind. So there is a connection between the name and the fact that Yaakov actually et bechorati lakach, he took my how do you call it in English? Primogeniture.
Yeah, I really
Firstbornness.
Firstborn benefits or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I believe there is a Latin term, primogeniture. And now he took even my blessing. Okay, now look at this. Esav said, his name, Yaakov, really suits him because he has supplanted me these 2 times. So Yaakov means supplanter, the one who supplants. Okay, because he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and here now he has taken away my blessing. Now, let's switch to let's switch to chapter 32.
Mhm.
And this is the very known place where Jacob is struggling with an angel. Now, let's try to understand this. He got up that night. He took his 2 wives, his 2 slave girls, and his 11 children, and forded the river of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream. Then he sent his possessions across, and Yaakov was left alone. Then some men wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he didn't defeat Yaakov, he struck Yaakov's hip socket, so that his hip was dislocated while wrestling with him. The man said, "Let me go, because it's daybreak. But Yaakov replied, "I will not let you go until you bless me." Now, what does that mean, until you bless me? Now look at this. The man asked, "What's your name?" How is this blessing? Because until you bless me, then then you say, "Well, bless be you, Božidar."
Yes, yes.
But instead of that, guy says, "What's your name?" And he answered, "Yaakov, supplanter, the one who passes from behind." Now he says, "From now on, you will no longer be called Yaakov. You will no longer be called the one who overtakes, the one who passes from behind, because you have shown your strength to both God and man and have prevailed." Okay? Yaakov asked him, "Please tell me your name." He asked the man, the guy, the angel. But he answered, "Why are you asking about name?" And blessed him there. Now, how is this blessing related? First of all, this translation here is not extremely good. Oh, okay, sorry. Here I switched, I skipped this one. The man said, "From now on you will no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel." So you will no longer be called supplanter, the one who passes from behind. You will be called Israel. Now, what Israel means? The one who goes straight on divine path. So Yaakov, Israel, these are 2 oppositions, right? So until now you were called cheater, but from now on you will be called righteous. So, bless me doesn't mean bless me. Bless me means recognize that the blessing is mine.
Mm-hmm.
The blessing that I've stolen, it was wrong. But I was right to wish for it. And I was right to strive for it. I just didn't got it in the right manner. But you should see by now that I've paid for my sins. And the same way I cheated my brother, I cheated my older brother, I was cheated and given an older sister instead of the younger sister. And so you can say by now that I've learned the hard way. And could you now retroactively recognize that even though legally it wasn't done the proper way, the blessing is mine, because I'm not a cheater anymore? And the man says, okay, as the sun rose upon him, he went on past Peniel, limping at the hip. This is beautiful. Why is this beautiful? Because the entire time he was limping in the real life, right? He wasn't, sorry. The whole time he was limping morally. He didn't limp in the real life. So while he was limping morally, he was called cheater. Now he is called righteous. But now he limps in the real life. Right? And if this is not practical joke, again, I'm Queen of England. But now let's switch to this one. This one is This one is one of the most lovable examples of divine humor. Moses said to God, this is when God appoints Moses as proto-Messiah, right? And he says, I'm God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov, and so on. And I'm sending you to bring my children out of the land of Egypt. Now, what does Moses says? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? He replied, I will surely be with you. Your sign that I have sent you will be that when you have led the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. What's the problem with this?
You need to lead. You need to leave the country.
But what kind of sign is that? I send you and I tell you, go and rebuild Yugoslavia. And you say, who am I to do it? And I say, oh, don't worry, I'll be with you. And you want the sign that you will be successful? Well, once you are done, you will get back to this place and I'll give you some cake. That's not a sign. I want the real sign. I want when I come to Egypt and I say to the people of Israel, God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, send me to you. I want the heaven to open. I want meteorites to start falling. Then when I go to Pharaoh and I tell to him, God of Israel has sent me. I want the day to turn into night. That's signs. Now look at this. Moses said to God, after God told him, this is the proof that I have sent you, you will be successful and we will meet here after everything. And that's the proof. So look at Moses. He says, Moses said to God, look, when I appear before the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what's his name? What am I to tell them? Now, this is catchy. And people in the West can't really grasp this because they think in a Western way. They don't think in ancient Middle Eastern Egyptian way. Now, we have to understand Moses is an Egyptian prince. So Moses thinks in an Egyptian manner, where if you have the name of God, you have power over God. So give me your name. And then, because if you think about it rationally, this is not a password. Why? Because Moses is Jewish, just like everybody else. So if the Jews know the name of God, and Moses knows the name of God, it's no proof. Because he's Jewish just like them. And then, if Jews don't know the name of God, and Moses knows the name of God, it's no proof. Because I come and I say, Kuzumuzu sent me to you. And you say, who? So this is not speaking in a Western manner. This is speaking in an Eastern manner, where to have the name of God is to have power over God. So Moses is basically saying, I want to be sure that when I come there and I start speaking in your name, you will not neglect me and you will not ignore me. So give me power over you. And what does God say? God said to Moses, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I shall be what I shall be. Now, what does that mean? You can't have power over me because I'm absolutely sovereign. I'm absolutely sovereign. I'm absolutely sovereign. That means that I myself don't know what I will choose to be. As an absolutely sovereign being, I can pick in any moment what I feel to do. So there is no way you can know my name. Right. And he added, no, God starts loving his own joke. And then he says, here is what to say to the people of Israel. Ehyeh, the one who shall be, has sent me to you. God said further to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. Now, this is development. Okay, so first of all, we have to understand that according to archaeological excavations, the name Yud-Heh Vav-Heh was in use amongst the Midianites. Moses is married with the daughter of a Midianite priest. So he already knows the name Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. Now God is making play of words because Yud He Vav He is how the Midianites refer to God. So they started with Yud, which refers to the third person, he who will be. Then God translates this into first. If they refer to me, he who shall be, then I am who will be. But then he says, you know what? Let's make their name more meaningful. And now all of a sudden, Yud He Vav He, the tetragrammaton, doesn't mean anymore what it meant amongst the Midianites. In Hebrew Bible, it receives the new meaning. It's play of words on all three different times: future, past, and present. So Yud He Vav He basically means the one who was, the one who will be, who was, and who is. Again, this is a joke. This is a joke on Moses' beliefs. Moses believes that he can have power over God if he has a name, and God teaches him in a humoristic way that that's impossible because he himself doesn't know what he will be in next given moment. Now this is, and we spoke about this, but being the fact that you are actually a reverend, they say in English, right? You are actually a reverend of a Seventh-day Adventist church, I believe, right?
Yes. We are Seventh-day Adventist church.
Then something beautiful to underline about Shabbat. When God says, I will be what I will be, I can't promise you what I will be. Right? This runs totally against the Greek concept of God. Greek concept of God is so perfect that he is imperfect. What does that mean? God is so perfect that he became imperfect, like plusquamperfect, imperfect, aorist, the past tenses. Why? Because Greek God cannot change. So the Greek philosophy says, God is perfect. If God is perfect, he cannot change his mind. So if God ever wanted to create world, that means that God always wanted to create world. Because it is impossible to conceive that God would not want to have world, and then in certain moment would change his mind and want the world. So if God always wanted the world, God will also in future will for the world to exist for eternity. So world is eternal. Why? Because ever since God exists, his will exists, and his will was that there should be world, and world exists since then. And since God doesn't change, his will doesn't change, therefore the world is forever. And then Hebrew God, or the God of the Bible, we celebrate the creation on the seventh day. We don't celebrate it on the sixth day of the week like Muslims. Muslims celebrate Friday. On Friday, the animal world and the humans were created. So fauna and human world humanity were created, and Muslims celebrate creation of fauna and humanity. Now, Christians, besides the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jews, obviously, the Christians celebrate the first day of creation. God created the heaven and earth, and God said, let there be light. Now, the Jews and the Seventh-day Adventists celebrate Shabbat, just like the Bible demands. What's the idea of Shabbat? The idea of Shabbat is that, yes, God created the world, but even Greek God can do that. That's not what makes him God. What makes him God is that he can stop creating. He is absolutely sovereign. Now, we don't grasp how can you be perfect and sovereign at the same time, right? But there's a beautiful Bosnian joke about that. We have those two characters, Suljo and Mujo, So there is a joke which says, Sulio asks Muyo, and he says, "What's this?" And he says, "I don't know. You tell me." He says, "I don't know either, but here it comes again." So, I don't know, but here it comes again. The Hebrew Bible says we do know that God is perfect, but we don't think that we need to immobilize him in order to make him perfect in our mind. We know that he is two things parallelly. He is perfect and he is sovereign. And being sovereign, he is alive and he can pick whatever he picks. And this is very, 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 very biblical concept. God is absolutely sovereign. But now, speaking of Jacob, I want to show you a beautiful, speaking of Jacob becoming Israel, or cheater becoming righteous, or overtaker, right, becoming the one who goes straight. This is a verse from Hosea. Hosea chapter 14, verse 10. And it says, look at this. The introduction to the verse is even worse than the rest of the verse. It says, let the wise understand these things, and let the discerning, the people who understand, know them. So he's just about to tell us something that you need wisdom in order to understand it. He's going to tell us something profound, something that asks for the ability of discerning. And then he says like this, for the ways of the Lord are straight, and the righteous walk in them, but in them sinners stumble. What the heck? If you were to tell me, that the divine ways are full of curves, and still, however, the righteous people will walk in them, I would say, wow. In spite the curves they are walking. But what's the big deal? The ways of the Lord are straight, and the righteous walk in them. But in them sinners stumble. How do you stumble on something straight? How do you stumble on something straight? The promise would be the ways are curved, but still, though, the righteous people will walk them. But no, the ways are straight, and the righteous will walk in them, which is like good morning, right? But in them sinners stumble. Oh, okay. If you are a sinner, then your legs are curved. And then, when the way is straight, there is a problem. A sinner with his curved legs can walk better on a curved way, but he falls and stumbles when the way is straight. And this is obviously, again, play of words, again, on Jacob and Israel. But now let's go to the cherry. Let's go to the cherry. The cherry is, you never knew, but there is an entire book in the Hebrew Bible which is humoristic. From the first to the last letter, the entire book is humoristic. And people don't know it. Why? Because
They don't know Hebrew.
exactly, they don't know Hebrew, but not only they don't know Hebrew, they don't have the spirit with which to get to the book. Because if I give you now the red hat, and I tell you that this is the most profound metaphysical wisdom of ancient people, it will be hard for you to understand that I was lying and that this was actually a fairy tale. Because you will look for symbolism and you will say the wolf means this, and the red hat means this, and the grandma means this, and the hunter means this, and this and that. But the solution is much easier. The solution is much more simple. It's a fairy tale. Now, people take the Bible to be the book of history. It's not the book of history. Now, people take Bible to be, for example, when people open the first chapter of the Bible, they think it's about divine recipe for the creation of the world. Well, it's not. How do we know it's not? Because it's not a recipe book. God is not Biden. He's not forgetful. He's never gonna forget how he created the world. He also doesn't have aspirations for us to create other worlds. And he's not writing a recipe book. But what he is writing, he's writing a book of Weltanschauung, you say in German. In other words, the book which will provide you the righteous outlook, the righteous way of understanding the world. So the entire story of creation of the world is subjugated to Shabbat. Why? Because Shabbat is the way to underline that God created the world, but he still runs it. And he can stop doing creation because he's absolutely sovereign. So people, when I say that people don't know how to get to the book, is they don't recognize. First of all, Bible is literature. Even when it's legal book, and even when it's philosophical book, and even, or let me put it this way, even when it deals with law, and even when it deals with philosophy, and even when it deals with metaphysics, it's always literature. There is not a single book, there is not a single chapter in a single book, there is not a single verse in a single chapter in a single book which is not literature. Now, literature has different techniques, and there is plenty of humoristic techniques, and Bible is using all of them. Bible is using parody, and it's using burlesque, and it's using grotesque. You remember the king who was killed in the WC, in the bathroom, you know, with his intestines coming outside and so on. Bible is using grotesque as well.
Is there one-liner jokes, like play with names and this? Because we see that he's using names, but is there any name that is funny by itself?
Of course. How do we call the lady who brought the children of Israel into the city of Jericho?
Rahab?
Yeah. What Rahab means in Hebrew?
Yeah, I think wide or
Yeah. The wide one or the broad one. Now, what was her profession?
She was a prostitute.
Okay. So let's connect the two. She was not called the broad one because she had broadband internet at her home. She was called wide one because for obvious reasons.
Her heart was broad.
Exactly. Exactly. So now people might think that this is disrespectful. Well, sorry, I have news for you. God is not disrespectful, and these are books that he wrote or at least inspired. And these are obvious jokes in those books. For example, we said that Baal Zevul, the master of the universe, becomes master of lies. But then God knows that the same joke doesn't make you laugh twice. So then the wife of Ahab, who was originally called Itat Zevul, which means the wife of the Baal Zevul, the wife of the master of the universe, no, the woman of the master of universe, right? And she was very devoted Baal worshipper. So she's called Itat Zevul. Now they are not going to call her Itat Zevuv now, which would mean the wife of the fly. Why? Because it's not funny anymore. So now she's called Izebel, which means not even trash. Less than a trash. Now, anybody who knows a bit of Hebrew knows that Izebel is not a name. Izebel is pun on her real name. Her real name is the woman of the master of the universe. The pun name ascribed to her in the Bible is not even trash. Less then a thresh. Now you have the same name, same noun, Zevul, which means universe. One time we convert Zevul into Zevuv, which means fly. Another time we convert Zevul into Zevel, which means thresh. And this is technique. Now, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not funny, but it always helps understanding. So I'll show you, for example, and there was a man who was called Elimelech. Now, Elimelech in Hebrew means God is my sovereign. Okay. Then this loyal suzerain of the God of Judea, at the first moment of famine, he goes to Moab. So his name is actually ironical. If God was his king, he would never leave the land of Israel because of the famine, right? He would, as a leader of the people, he would think why the people were punished with famine. And then he would strive to change their ways, to make them change their ways. Now, his wife is called Naomi. Naomi means the beautiful one, the delicate one. And they have two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And Mahlon and Chilion got married with two Moabite girls. The name of one of the girls is Orpah, and the name of the other girl is Ruth. And then they both die, and Naomi wants to go back to the land of Israel, and she's followed by her two daughters-in-law. And then she says, come on, girls, be realistic. Even if I was to lie with a man today and have children with him, would you wait for those children to be 15 years old to get married with you by the time you will be 40? Go home, back to your parents. And then Orpah turns her back on her mother-in-law and goes back. And Ruth says, no, your God is my God. Your people is my people. Your country is my country. Wherever you go, I shall go with you. Where you eat, I shall eat. Where you lie, I shall lie. But what's the meaning of the name? Well, Orpah means back. Oref in Hebrew means back.
Yes.
So Orpah is Becky. So Becky turned her back on her mother-in-law. But then Ruth in Moabite means inheritance.
Okay.
So inheritance came back with her mother-in-law and established the seed of her husband at his inheritance, at the inheritance of his fathers. And then beautifully, what was the name of Ruth's husband? Mahlon.
Yeah.
Mahlon in Hebrew means the one who is forgiven. And what's the name of Orpah's husband? Chilion. Chilion in Hebrew means the one who is finished with.
Okay.
So you see that basically Bible is also literature. It's literature which advocates right ideas and advocates right laws and explains metaphysical truths, but it's literature. And it's written like literature. And it contains also these literary techniques which were typical of Middle Eastern literature. So now let's concentrate on a single book, which in its entirety is a humoristic book. And by the end of this experiment, we will also decide what kind of humoristic literature this book belongs to. So, the word of Adonai came to Jonah. Jonah in Hebrew means the pigeon. What's the pigeon symbol of?
Symbol of peace.
The end of divine wrath.
Yeah.
Because the flood was finished, not when the raven came out, but when the pigeon came out of, right? So this is what's important. Symbol of the end of divine wrath. So even before we started reading the book, we know that divine wrath will end. Because Jonah means pigeon. And pigeon symbolizes the end of the flood, not the beginning of the flood. Okay, so the word of Adonai came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, or in English, the word of Lord came to pigeon, the son of truth lover. So now we have two things, right? On one side, we see that Jonah is supposed to be the symbol of peace, the symbol of end of divine breath. But on the other side, he is, how to call it? He is anxious.
Mhm.
Okay. Set out for the great city of Nineveh. Now, what does Nineveh mean in Hebrew?
It is pond of fishes, something like that.
Yes, oasis of fish. Now, oasis of fish, but then Jonah doesn't go, and then the fish swallows him. Because if a prophet swallows his own prophecy, you see, if the prophet is supposed to go to the world, but if the prophet swallows his prophecy, then the world swallows the prophet, because the prophecy should swallow the world. But if you swallow the prophecy, then the world swallows you. Okay, so, and proclaim to it that their wickedness has come to my attention. But Jonah, in order to get away from Adonai, which is like, what? This is obviously a parody on the very idea of the prophet, because we have two reactions when the God promotes somebody to become a prophet. We have two typical reactions. One reaction is, who am I to go? And then God says, don't worry, I'll be with you. Or the other reaction is, here I am, send me. But there is no such a thing as, I'm not telling you, but I will just fly away. Okay, so no, look at this. But Jonah, in order to get away from Adonai, prepared to escape to Tarshish. He went down to Jaffa, found a sheep headed for Tarshish, paid the fare and went aboard, intending to travel with them to Tarshish and get away from Adonai. However, Adonai let loose over the sea a violent wind, which created such stormy conditions that the sheep threatened to break to pieces. The sailors were frightened, and each cried out to his God, not yet to the real God, but each one to his own God. They throw the cargo overboard to make the sheep easier for them to control. Now we know the sailors from literature, and we know the sailors from life. And in both cases, they are not really righteous people who cry out to God and who throw their own cargo before throwing other people. As a topic of literature, we would expect sailors to come, take Jonah, and throw him away immediately. Why should I throw my belongings and not throw some man that I never saw? Meanwhile, Jonah had gone down below into the hold. Because when you are trying to escape from God, right?
You're going to darkness.
And where he lie, fast asleep. The ship captain found him. Now, the ship captain is like, everybody here is outside of himself. This is Titanic. And the ship is just about to sink. And you are sleeping. So he told him, what do you mean by sleeping? Get up. Call on your God. Maybe the God will remember us and we won't die. Then they said to each other, come. Now, the sailors, they want to establish in impartial, consequently non-subjective, consequently objective way, who is the one at whom God is mad. So, come, let us draw lots to find out who is to blame for this calamity. Now, they don't say the ship is ours, so it's not us who are guilty. Let's throw the strangers. No, they say let's objectively establish, semi-objectively, or the closest thing to objectively, decide who is. They draw lots, and Jonah was singled out. They said to him, now, look at these sailors. They are not throwing him immediately. People are afraid for their life. Maybe Titanic will not sink if they just throw Jonah. No, these people are over moral. So they say, tell us now, why has this calamity came upon us? Now, usually, God punishes people for what they do in their line of work. Where are you from? Because maybe this is some country that God hates because people behave in a hateful way, like people of Canaan or like Amalekites. What is your country and which is your people? He answered them. Now, what was their first question? What's your job?
Yeah.
He says, I'm a Hebrew. So
Prophet.
he's a professional Jew. Right? And I fear Adonai, the God of heaven, who made both the sea and the dry land. Well, if he created both the sea and the dry land, why the heck you believe that you can escape from him to Tarshish? Because God has sovereignty only over Israel. But if you go abroad, then he can't do anything to you? Okay. At this, the man grew very afraid and said to him, what's this that you have done? For the man knew he was trying to get away from Adonai since he had told them. Now, what he told them is a total absurd. He says, I'm serving God, but right now I don't feel like that. So God told me to do something. I don't want to do it. So I'm trying to escape from him. Well, then you are not serving God. Right? Okay. They ask him, what should we do to you? Now, even after he admitted that it's because of him, and he told them why, still they are not throwing him. So they say, what should we do to you so that the sea will be calm for us? For the sea was getting rougher all the time. This is the narrative of the Bible. For the sea was getting, right? Narrator of the Bible. Pick me up, he told them, and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will calm for you, because I know it's my fault that this terrible storm has come over you. Nevertheless, even now they are not throwing him. The men rowed hard, trying to reach the shore. But they couldn't, because the sea kept growing wilder against them. Finally, they cried to Adonai. Now they are not crying anymore to their gods. Now they recognize that there is God. So Jonah is basically a very successful prophet.
Exactly.
He didn't come there, as a preacher, telling them the story. No, they saw from his life, being the fact that he is persecuted for forsaking the word of God, they understood that there is such thing as God. Right? So look at this. Finally, they cried to Adonai, please, Adonai, please, don't let us perish for causing the death of this man, and don't hold us to account for shedding innocent blood, because you, Adonai, have done what you saw fit. Then they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped raging. Seized with great fear of Adonai, they offered a sacrifice to Adonai and made vows. Now we switch to the chapter 2. Look at this. Adonai prepared a huge fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. What do you do? What did you do when the fish swallowed you last time?
I have to cry immediately to God. Save me from this.
But Jonah, no. He's waiting 3 days for God to repent. But God wouldn't repent. God is stubborn. So from the belly of the fish, Jonah prayed to Adonai, his God, and said, out of my distress I called to Adonai, and he answered me. From the belly of Sheol, now look at this, and he already answered me. So he's not praying as somebody who is afraid for his life. He's praying as a spoiled child who knows that at the moment he eats the how you call it? Špinat. Kako se kaže špinat na engleskom?
Oh, I think it's peanut. I'm not sure.
Spinach or something like that. Spinach. Okay. So the kids don't like eating spinach. So you have a spoiled child and you send him out of his table and you say, no internet and no iPhone and no tablet until you eat your spinach. And then the kid knows that at the moment he eats his spinach, everything is going to be okay, right? You are not going to kill him. So he says, out of my distress, I called to Adonai, and he answered me already. From the belly of Sheol I cried, and you already heard my voice. For you throw me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood enveloped me. Flood, the same flood that pigeon, right?
Yeah.
All your surging waves passed over me. I thought I have been banished from your sight, but I will again look at your holy temple. Third day in a fish. The waters surrounded me, threatened my life. The deep closed over me, seaweed twinned around my head. I was going down to the bottoms of the mountains, to a land whose bars would close me in forever. But you brought me up alive from the pit. He's not asking. He's stating the fact that he's already saved. Adonai, my God, as my life was ebbing away, I remembered Adonai. And my prayer came into you. It's not gonna come. It already came into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols give up their source of mercy. But I, speaking my thanks aloud, will sacrifice to you in future when I return to Jerusalem. What I have vowed, I will pay. Salvations come from Adonai. Okay? Now, this is the strangest prayer ever. No sign of distress whatsoever. He is totally sure that he is already saved because he just decided to eat his spinach. And then the word of Adonai came to Jonah a second time. Set out for the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I will give you. So Jonah set out and went to Nineveh, as Adonai has said. Now, Nineveh was such a large city that it took 3 days just to cross it. So it's like New York. You know, it's 5 boroughs, not only Manhattan. This is 5 boroughs of New York. Now, Nineveh was such a large city that it took 3 days just to cross it. Jonah began his entry into the city and had finished only his first day of proclaiming, in 40 days Nineveh will be overthrown. Now imagine this. The prophets come to Israel in morning and in evening for 10 years, 40 years. Nobody hearkens to them. Nobody listens to them. But Jonah, not so. He's total stranger in the city. Nobody ever saw him. It's a huge city. It's New York. Now, Jonah is at Manhattan. He stops at the corner of 5th Avenue and 37th East. And he says, Arbod Arbaim Yom Veninveh Nepachet, 5 words. 40 days more and Nineveh shall be destroyed. And then the buzz in Manhattan stops. Everybody believes him immediately. Right? When the people of Nineveh believed God, this is the most successful prophet in history. First of all, he convinced the people on the boat. Now he convinced the people of Nineveh. But he never preached to them 10 years. He went silently for 1 day walking distance, stopped on a single spot, and said a single sentence. And what happened? Jonah began his entry into the city and has finished 1-way walk and proclaimed, in 40 days Nineveh will be overthrown. When the people of Nineveh believed God, they proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them to the least. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, now what do we expect the king to say? Who the heck is Jonah? Bring him to me. Then Jonah is supposed to say, God of Israel has sent me to you. And the king is supposed to say, God, I'm the God here. But look at this. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, he got up from his throne, took off his robe, put on sackcloth, and sat in ashes. Doesn't need even to see Jonah. He believes immediately. He then had this proclamation made throughout Nineveh. By decree of the king and his nobles, no person or animal, herd or flock, is to put anything in his mouth. When is the last time we heard about animals fasting?
Never.
Never. To eat nor drink water. They must be covered with sackcloth. Come on. Sackcloth on a man makes sense, right? Because we have delicate,
sensitive skin.
Sensitive skin, and then instead of silk, and instead of whatever you put, when you put something like sackcloth or whatever is the English word which I don't know how to pronounce, sackcloth. When you put sackcloth, it's like Utah, right? So it's hurting you, basically. But how does it help a cow? How does it help a sheep? Right? No, but the king says they all should dress sackcloth, and they all should stop eating and drinking. They must be covered with sackcloth, both people and animals. And they are to cry out to God, right? Especially the sheep, with all their might, right? Especially the cows. Let each of them turn from his evil way, especially the bulls, and from the violence they practice. I'm as violent as a sheep, right? Who knows? Maybe God will change his mind, relent and turn from his first anger, and then we won't perish. Then God saw by their deeds that they had turned from their evil way. He relented and didn't bring on them the punishment he had threatened. Now, for the first time in history of prophecy, we have a successful prophet. Non-successful prophets were happy with their lot because they were serving God. But Jonah, the only successful prophet in the history of prophecy, is not happy with his lot. But this was very displeasing to Jonah, and he became angry. He prayed to Adonai. Now, this is first time in history that somebody is praying that God should destroy. Not that God should not destroy, but rather that God should destroy. So, now Adonai, didn't I say that this would happen? When I was still in my own country. That's why I tried to get away to Tarshish ahead of time. I knew you were a God who is merciful and compassionate, slow to anger, rich in grace, and that you relent from inflicting punishment. Now he's converting all divine effects into defects. This is first time in the history of biblical literature that merciful, compassionate, slow to anger, rich in grace, relent from inflicting punishment are considered to be God's misgivings. So basically he's telling him, well, I was right, you see, because I knew you were never going to destroy them. Because I knew that you were a God who is merciful and compassionate, slow to anger and rich in grace, and that you relent from inflicting punishment. Therefore, Adonai, please, just take my life away from me, because if you are not going to kill them, then kill me. It's better for me to be dead than alive, because you made me a fool. You made me come to the city and tell them a single time, a 5-word sentence. And then they all repented, and now I'm a fool. Now I'm an idiot, because you are not destroying Nineveh. Adonai asked, is it right for you to be so angry? Okay, this is one of the most Anglican sentences in the entire Bible, right? Because God over here speaks just like Archbishop of Canterbury. Is it right for you to be so angry? Dear, indeed. Jonah left the city. Now Jonah believes that God will make repentance, that God will repent and destroy Nineveh. So full of hope, he goes to the hill which oversees Nineveh and waits for Nineveh to be destroyed. Jonah left the city and found a place east of the city where he made himself a shelter and sat down under it in its shade to see what would happen to the city. Adonai, God, prepared a castor bean plant and made it grow up over Jonah to shade his head and relieve his discomfort. So Jonah was delighted with the castor bean plant. So wait, just 5 minutes ago, you asked to be killed. Obviously, you didn't really mean that. Because if you are happy that you have natural shelter over your head, this doesn't disclose depressive, maniacal, suicidal, right? No, he is basically emotionally blackmailing God into destruction of Nineveh. And that's why he pretends to be on verge of suicide, but he is actually happy when custom bean plant shelters him. But at dawn the next day, God prepared a worm, which attacked the castor bean plant so that it dried up. Then, when the sun rose, God prepared a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head so hard that he grew faint and begged that he could die, saying, I would be better than dead than alive. God asked Jonah, again in the manner of Archbishop of Canterbury, is it right for you to be so angry about the castor bean plant? He answered, yes, it is right for me to be so angry that I could die. This sounds like Monty Python Flying Circus already. Adonai said, you are concerned over the castor bean plant, which cost you no effort. Now let's remember the fish which didn't cost anything in Egypt. You didn't make it grow. It came up in a night and perished in a night. So shouldn't I be concerned about the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left, not to mention all the animals who are fasting? Okay, so now, how do we call this literary genre? You don't have to be professor of literature to recognize that there are two main genre that this book belongs to.
So it is obvious that it's humor present here.
Yes, but how do we like would we call the genre? The genre?
Sarcasm?
No.
Oh.
Parody.
Parody. Oh, yes, parody.
Parody. Now, what's parody? Parody is when you use a text or a literary motif and you make slight changes in a humoristic way. Okay, so Jonah is not a parody of a single text, but it's parody of literary motifs, like the motif of prayer in disastrous times. So what do you say? I'm dying, help me, save my soul from the. No, he says, and I'm already saved, and I will bring my sacrifices whenever I come to Jerusalem, which I thank you for, by the way, right? So it's parody of appointing the prophet. It's parody on prophetic service. It's parody on, and so on. Now, so am I diminishing the Holy Bible? Am I making fun of the Holy Writ? Am I disrespectful to the Holy Scripture? Not more than God himself, obviously, because he is the one who inspired the book. What's the idea of the book? First of all, the book is making fun of Jewish ethnophilitism. Now, coming from Balkans, you know what's ethnophilitism. Ethnophilitism is when somebody believes in special value of his own people. Now, yes, one of the main themes of the Bible is that Jews are chosen, but they're not chosen to be chosen. They're chosen to do a thing. Now, the fun part of it is that the parody of Jonah is actually when Moses, I have to show you this verse. Actually, I will ask you to find it.
Okay.
That's when Moses prays to God. Let me just find the verse. Okay, it's the Exodus 33, 16. Exodus 33, 16. Can you open it for everybody?
Oh,
Maybe.
yes.
It's easier if everybody sees it.
Bible, but okay. Exodus 33.
Yes. 16, but we shall start maybe with, I don't know, 10, 11, 12.
Yes. Okay, here it is.
Okay. Uh, then Moses said to the Lord, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you haven't let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray, if I have found grace in your sight, show me now your way, that I may know you, and that I may find grace in your sight, and consider that this nation is your people." Now wait. And he said, God answers, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And then he said to him, if your presence doesn't go with us, God just told him that the present will go with him. But look at what Moses says. If your present doesn't go with us, do not bring us up from here. For how then will it be known that your people and I have found grace in your sight, except you go with us? And now goes the most important verse. So we shall be discriminated, your people and I. Here says separate, but no, it's not separate. The Hebrew Bible says, so we shall be discriminated, your people and I, from all the people who are up on the face of the earth. Now, what does that mean? We shall be discriminated? Because up to that moment, up to the Moses prayer, it goes very easily. If you follow God's will, you are blessed. People see that you are blessed. They ask, why are you blessed? Oh, I'm following this. We shall also follow that. Then if you don't follow God's will, you are forgotten, and end of story. Now Moses says, I'm asking for discrimination for bad and for good. If we are doing good, then let us be discriminated for good, and let everybody imitate our ways. But if we don't do what we are supposed to do, don't throw us away. Curse us, so that by our curse, it will be known to the nations of the world that your name is called upon us. And then they will learn through it the way they would learn from our blessed state. But don't ever give up on us. Have us blessed or have us cursed, but always stay with us. And if you are not going to be with us, for good or for bad, for any type of discrimination, then just forget about the story.
Don't play with us.
And this is Jonah. What's Jonah about? It says, even when Jews are supposed to be the priests to the world. Now, you yourself are a reverend, right? So you know what's the difference between a priest and a monk. Monk goes to a Mount of Athos and he lives there, but God never said he wants the people of Israel to be monks. No, he wanted them to be priests. Now, what do priests do? Priests are there to be middlemen between God and the people. Now, the nation of priests means the nation who is middleman between God and peoples. Now, what the book of Jonah says, when Jews mediate, then they are blessed for their mediation and people. But when Jews don't mediate, then they are cursed. And anyways, divine will is done and people learn from it. So the sailors learned from Jonah's misbehavior more than they would ever learn from his behavior. And then the people of Nineveh learned more from this eccentric prophet than they would ever do from a normal prophet. So what do we see? We see that God wants to convey a beautiful and important idea, that Moses' prayer was accepted, and that there is a people who will be access of knowledge of God in the world. And those people will not be left over to circumstantiality, but they will always be either obviously blessed or obviously cursed. And from them, and from their status as blessed or cursed, everybody else will always know there is God. There is a story that Napoleon once asked Metternich, I believe, or something like that. I can't remember he said, is there any proof that God exists? And the other guy told him, the Jews. So yes, the Bible and the fact that, uh, but now again, Bible is making fun of the idea the Jews are chosen to be chosen. Nobody chooses anything to be his chosen anything. If you choose a fork, that's because you are eating French fries. But if you were eating a soup, you would choose a spoon. But then again, the spoon wouldn't be your chosen spoon, and you wouldn't put it onto a wall, and you wouldn't bow down to it saying, oh, my chosen spoon. No, you picked the spoon because you want to do something with it. So that's how God picked the Jews. So now there are a few possibilities. And all of this is commentary on Jonah, or Jonah in English. When God picked the Jews, was he sadistic? He knew that they will never fulfill his will, and consequently, he will be able to punish them, and he will enjoy that. Maybe he was masochistic. They will never listen to him, so he can always be embittered and always quatch about it, like, oh, those people, there are people who enjoy that. But no, it doesn't sound extremely divine to be masochistic or sadistic. So maybe Jews were picked to do exactly what they did. Oh, that's a possibility. Now, what did they do? They were actually a group of slaves in the country of Egypt. They never had material culture like pyramids and whatever valley of kings and that kind of stuff. They didn't even have army. They didn't even have police. In their own language, they said to themselves, they didn't have CNN, they didn't have BBC, they didn't have Twitter, they didn't have Facebook. Everybody else was bowing down to Paro, and they said, oh, this is a joke. Okay. And then 4,000 years later, everybody says it's a joke. Now, the Egyptians, when you go to Egypt, even Egyptian Arabs, and certainly the real Egyptians, the Copts, the descendants of Paro. If you go to them, they are very proud that they are descendants of Paro. And then you ask them, oh, nice, and you like the pyramids? Of course we do. And you like yes, of course we do. And how do you feel about Moses and Paro? Oh, Moses is a good guy. Then you go to Middle Persia, then you go to Babylon, then you go wherever you go, you go to Iraq. And then Iraqi Christians, who are the original population of Iraq, Nebuchadnezzar, that's the name, like Nabucco, the opera. And they are very proud about his gardens and his this and his that. And then you say, oh, and by the way, Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, they say, oh, Daniel is the good guy. Now, what were the chances that this small, tiny group who only knows how to write good, divinely inspired literature will become the world narrative? But if you ask anybody today, Paro, if you mention Paro, the first association is pyramids, the second association is Moses. If you say Nabucodonosor, right, Nebuchadnezzar in Hebrew, the only association is Verdi and the choir of Jews, right? What were the chances? No, there were no chances at all. So that's exactly why the Jews were picked. They were picked to create this inspired piece of literature which changed the world. Now, okay, so it changed the world. Why do we need them still? Well, somebody needs to keep, as far as Judaism is concerned, all these other versions, other interpretations, they are shareware. But there is a genuine program which contains 613 applications. Now, whichever nation, at whichever point in time, This is exactly why the British Empire was so successful. While it was successful, it's not anymore, but it's not because it stopped being Judeo-Christian. This is exactly the reason why America was so successful after the British. And they might still be successful in future because they are returning to their Judeo-Christian roots. But what are the reasons? We, the people of Massachusetts, accept the law of Moses as Constitution of Massachusetts. So, whichever nation applied any number of applications, out of 613 applications, it was blessed procentually. You keep 5, you get paid for 5. You keep 15, you get paid for 15. But there should be somebody who takes care of, when we were kids, there were those soup, how do you call them?
Like small boxes in the
Yeah,
soup cubics. Yeah.
exactly.
Even now,
So,
the Dominicans have very good in international shops here. Dominican soup, chicken soup, is still in those cubes. Friend of mine brought me just from Dominica recently.
so there is not a drop of water in it. It's condensed soup. And then you put it into something, and then you add 5 liters of water, and you get, or you give 1 liter of water, and you get, honorable soup. That's what Jews are for. They are here to keep the soup. And we are doing it just well, quite well, I shall rather say. So whoever wants to understand Bible, first of all, people can be saved without Bible. There is no doubt about that. Abraham was saved and he didn't have any Bible. Yitzhak was saved and he didn't have any Bible, and so on and so on and so on. But come on, 1 in a city, 2 in a family were saved. But after the Bible was written, the numbers, the Bible brought about democratization of salvation. So now we are speaking millions. Now we are speaking billions. We are not speaking anymore a single Abraham, a single Yitzhak, a single Jacob. So yes, it's a highway to salvation. Now, you don't need it, but it's easier with it. The same way you don't really need prescription for your computer, but once it stops working, you go to prescription. And many a time we see that something about us stops working, so we should go to the prescription. And the Bible is just that. So we need to understand it. If it is what it seems to be, divine message to humanity, then we need to understand it. And we cannot understand it as no literature if it's more than obvious that it's written as literature. Now, it's not only literature. It's not only Romeo and Juliet, and it's not only Dostoevsky and Brothers Karamazov, and it's not only Tolstoy and right, but it is written in a literary manner. So you want to understand Bible? You don't need to learn archaeology. People think you do. You don't. You don't need to learn history. People think you do. You don't. You can. It's helpful. But literature is like 40% of instruments to understanding the Bible. And Hebrew language is other 40%. And then everything else is only 20. History and archaeology. And it's all 20%. To understand the Bible properly, you need to know the language in which it was written and the way in which it was written. And it's written as literature. And it's written as literature, and it contains many different literary techniques, many of whom are humoristic. Irony. There is the beautiful piece of irony in the book of Kings when Elijah the prophet, he says, let them go first because there are many, and let them bring sacrifice. And so they bring sacrifice and nothing happens. Because Elijah said, the God who answers with fire, he is the God. And then noonish, around noon, Elijah comes and says, why don't you scream more? Because he's God. He might be in WC. Maybe he's on the phone. Now, really, I swear, this is the modern way to translate the Hebrew verse. Because Hebrew verse says, Vechisiglo, maybe he is under immediate duress. In other words, maybe he's in the bathroom. Vehisiachlo, maybe he is engaging a conversation. So how do you translate that verse in modern English? Why don't you scream more? Because he's God. He might be in WC. Or in the middle of phone conversation. But he's certainly God. That's irony. What's irony? Irony is when you are saying A, but you have in mind Z. Okay? So that's irony. So we have everything. We have grotesque. We have burlesque. We have irony. We have sarcasm. We have everything. And it's pity that people don't really go to the first bookstore and buy a book on how to call it, introduction to literature, and apply that to Bible. They would understand it much better than all those commentaries which are oriented on ways in which Bible was not written. Because people think that, if on one place it says that this person killed Goliath, and another place it says that that person killed Goliath, wow, this is diminishing. No, it's not diminishing because it's not history. Forget about it. It's not history. It was never meant to be history. You open the book of Judges, right? And it's not that you have one story in Genesis and another story in Chronicles. No, you have two stories next to each other. One story says, you have a story and a song next to each other. And one story says, and then, so one version says, and Sisera came, and she gave him milk, and he went to sleep. And then she took the thing and went with it through his blind eyes. Okay? So he went to sleep. He lied down. The other story says, no, he was metrosexual. She gave him the utensil with milk. And then she came with a thing, right? But he was so metrosexual that he couldn't really throw away the milk. And then she goes through his blind eyes while he's standing. Now, what's the truth? Who cares? This is not a book about Sisera. Forget about it. Who cares how Sisera died? What's the message of the book? The message of the book is, if you don't have a king, then woman will make miracles. Foreign woman will make miracles. It's anarchy. You don't have a system. That's the message of the book. And on every 2 pages, there is a verse which says, and in those days, there was no king in Israel, and everybody would do whatever they wanted. So this is the message of the book. Or, for example, you have 2 stories how David came to Shaul's court. First, it says, Shaul was depressive. Saul, whatever is his name in English, Saul was depressive. And then somebody told him, oh, there is this kid called David. He's the son of Yishai, and he is a beautiful musician. And then they brought David. And then next chapter. It's not first book and finished second book. Next chapter. It says, and David was no musician, he was a shepherd. And he was shepherding the flock of his father, and there was a war, and Goliath, and he comes and he says, okay, give me, I'll kill him. And then Saul says, who is this kid? So he never saw him. Why these 2 stories are next to each other? Oh, to teach you that you need to learn there are different ways of reading different biblical books. So one way is like this. And the books of Samuel, Samuel 1st, Samuel 2nd, should be read like that. So you need to know when you close each eye. Then there are books which are supposed to be read like this. On YouTube. No, not on YouTube. Like on iPhone, you have music, right? Yeah. So you can randomly play, or you can play from the beginning to the end, or you can play circularly. So there are biblical books which are supposed to be read in circle, like the Book of Kings, because you never understand Solomon if you read it only from the beginning to end. You need to read it from the end to beginning. Solomon starts as the king of David and ends up as female reproductive organ worshipper who made from a guy who created temple for God, he ends up as also creating temple for foreign gods. But if you read it only this way, you don't get it. So you have to read from the end to the beginning, and then again from the beginning to the end. So these so-called contradictions, they are not contradictions because this is not history book. If this was history book, these would be contradictions. But this is a masterpiece literary work aimed at providing you with proper way of understanding the world and with proper set of laws. So that's the way to read it. Okay, I think we can stop now. It was a long way to Tipperary.
Thank you very much. It is one of the rare. Usually, when you have a Christian and Jew, or Christian, Muslim, Jew, whoever, when you mix these three Abrahamic religions, always it is cause of debate and fighting each other. And this is something that I don't think is productive. I think the best way is let me hear how you understand it. And this is only way how we can help each other to grow. But now, I just want to quote you one sentence from other podcasts that you mentioned. You said, Bible is so human that it must be divine. I think this is the best sentence that I heard from you. And this is beauty that we can study and study again. And we would never reach the bottom of this beauty that God created to us. So I hope now this crisis that we have in world would help us to go back to manuals and enjoy it. And if you want to learn Hebrew and you don't know how to do, Duolingo, it's very good. And one of the first words in Duolingo, it's Jonah, pigeon. So you cannot avoid these things. So I think it is really, really blessing. And Hebrew is not that hard, I must confess, because it's very logical, very logical. It's hard to start, but when you get it, it is beautiful. Thank you very much, Eliezer, and thank you for your time, dear audience. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I decided to call it Broken English for Broken Hearts. My English is not the best. I crucified English with each of my sentence, but I think we still can bring some hope for broken hearts because we can see without God we are completely broken. Thank you very much.
You are more than welcome. It was real pleasure.
Thank you.